Okay, guys, we're going to take our absolute value equations and inequalities and put them together in this one. And so we're going to work through, I think, 4 examples that are going to be on here. Well, really 3, and one of them is going to need a graphing on the front of this to kind of pull all that together. So let's start by filling in the centerpiece. So we're going to do solving absolute value equations and inequalities. So this is the first time we're going to do it where we have both of them together. And so we'll do a couple of the equations, and then we'll do one of the inequalities with the graphing on the front of this to kind of pull everything together. So let's go to our first box. So here's my first one, absolute value of n plus 7 minus 6 equals 8. So in order to solve this, I need to get this absolute value by itself. So I've got to get rid of the minus 6. So the opposite of subtracting 6 is adding 6. So it's the absolute value of n plus 7. And then 8 plus 6 on this side is going to give you 14. Okay, now that my absolute value is alone, I could do my 2 branches. So the first time through, you're writing it exactly the way it's written, but you're dropping the absolute value bars. When I do the second branch, I don't have to do anything with the equal, but this 14 becomes a negative 14. And now I just have a little bit of solving in order to get this by itself. So to get rid of adding 7, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. So I get n equals 7. Or on this side, because it's plus 7, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. Negative 14 minus 7 is negative 21. So there is my first piece. Okay, let's go to the next one. We'll do one more that is an equation, and then we'll do the inequality. So I have B. It's absolute value of negative 5k plus 3 equals 33. So I need to get this by itself. So I'm going to get rid of the plus 3. So the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. So I have the absolute value of negative 5k equals 30. Now that the absolute value is by itself, I can do my 2 branches. So the first one is going to be negative 5k equals 30. All I'm doing is rewriting this just without the absolute value bars. I'm going to add or. For the second branch, it's still negative 5k. But this 30 is going to become negative 30. And now I got to do some little solving on both sides. So it's negative 5 times k. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 5 is dividing by negative 5. So I have k equals negative 6. Bring down my or. And then same thing on this side, I'm going to have to divide by -5. But on this side, I get +6. So you might see it written like this, or you might see people put it together like this. That's a shortcut for saying it could be +6 or -6, which is really what happens here. So either one of these would be an okay way to write that. Just so you know it in case you see any of them written that way. Okay, now we're going to go to an inequality that we're going to solve and then graph. And this will be our last piece for today. So for C, this is going to be my solving one. I have the absolute value of v plus 5 minus 6 is less than -5. So to get this absolute value by itself, I've got to get rid of this -6. So instead of subtracting 6, we're going to add 6. So I have the absolute value of v plus 5 is less than 1. So I have the absolute value by itself, so I can do my two branches. First time through, we're going to write it exactly the way it is. Just drop the absolute value bars. The second time through, remember, we flip this and change this. So it's going to be greater than, and instead of +1, it's going to be -1. So now I'm going to go through and start to solve. So if I have +5, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. 1 minus 5 is -4. Bring my OR down. And then really it's the same process over here. I'm going to subtract 5. And I get -6. So those are my two answers. So now I'm going to take this to my next box to do the graphing. So I'm going to still call this one C, and I'm going to still label it like I did the other ones for graphing. And I'm going to bring my two inequalities over. So the two numbers they care about are -6 and -4. So I'm going to put those where they would go on the number line. Remember, if it's negative, -4 is going to be higher than -6 in this number line, so just be aware of that. Both of these are going to have open circles. So if I start with this first one, it's going to be an open circle at -4, so right here. And because my variable goes first, this points the way the line's going to go, so it's going to go this way. So open circle, and then it goes that way. Now, I could already tell these are probably going to overlap, so I'm going to do this second one right here underneath. So open circle at -6. My line's going to go this way. Okay, that means that I can see that there's some overlapping that happens between here and here. So I'm going to take this and move the circle up. Bring this one, circle down. And this is what they share in common, this part in between. So the part I'm doing in the white here, this is the only part that's going to appear for your answer if it were a test or a quiz. Obviously, the yellow lines that I did are going to help me be able to determine where that is. But they're only going to show this final answer part when you look on like a test or a quiz or even the SAT. Okay, that wraps up that part with the inequalities.